I saw the face in the window, pressed up against the surface, its scythe breath fogging the cold grass. It appeared strange to me, the skin beneath his eyes dropping in ripples of flesh, exposing the red sensitive strata underneath. It was the winter of '81, and I had booked the cabin for 3 nights. A break was needed, somewhere to relax, somewhere to recover. I had had a heart attack 2 months earlier, a painful, excruciating experience which I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. I lost consciousness only to find myself in a hospital bed days later. It was my daughter, Jen, who discovered me. The cabin was to be a retreat, a place far removed from stresses of my life, the fallout from a failed marriage, the pressures of a flagging career. The doctors had done their part through surgery and medication. Now it was my turn to help my body heal as best as it could. I was preparing for the quiet solitude of the countryside, following the advice of the experts and those men and women in sterile white coats. I had almost ignored their recommendations, remaining slumped at home, festering, counting the hours and beats of my heart as finite measures of my life. In those black days of loneliness, I had only the thought of my daughter to keep me from slipping into a dark depression. And yet she stayed with her father most of the time. Perhaps I had been cold towards her too. If it hadn't been for Jay, I would never have gone. He kept me going, in fact, and finally persuaded me that a few days away in the countryside would do me good. Still, I was terrified of being left isolated, away from things and people. That was why we chose Blackwood Cabin. Jay had visited there as a child. It sat on the outskirts of a large forest with a beautiful flowing river on the other side. Despite its seeming detachment from the world, it was in fact only 6 miles from the nearest hospital, which stood near a small town on the boundary of that thick, darkened web of trees. I could feel myself begin to relax as we left the city, and during the drive we both talked and laughed, reminiscing about our days together at university. For the first time in months, I felt positive about the world. The single-track road weaved its way through Blackwood Forest. We wriggled over 6 miles of twists and turns and serpentine slitherings before we finally reached the clearing. A large waterlogged path of wild grass carpeted the area. So much so that we had to park the car a few hundred feet from our destination for fear of getting stuck. The cabin was itself small, with one main room complete with cozy log burner and stove, and 2 cramped bedrooms at the back. The first day was uneventful, exactly what I needed, relaxing with a book, watching the river swell and swarm with the winter currents. It was then that I understood the naming of the place. The woodland was dark and black, yes, but full of life, of vibrancy. But I would never have guessed at the horrors which lurked between its tightly woven evergreen branches. Many tourist traps surviving tales of ghosts hidden somewhere nearby. Stories exaggerated by pub landlords or hotel managers, speaking of rooms where something ominous walks at the midnight hour. In a bookshelf tucked away in the corner of one of the bedrooms, Jay found a warped old hardback. The papers were yellowed, and while it contained the publication date of 1967, the book was called The Beast of Blackwood Forest. I had myself heard the stories like this when I was younger. All the kids talked about the Beast of Blackwood, a creature which everyone's uncle had seen while out hunting in the forest, dark, hulking, monstrous. Of course, I always laughed at such things, and no concrete evidence for it had ever been found. But each winter there were rumors, whispers about something shambling through the woods at night. I found the book quite compelling. It's affected me enough to cause me to see something which wasn't there. Shadows moving outside under the cloak of dust. I began to feel my heart once more, and decided that it was best way to leave the terrors of the horror genre behind. My mind was still fraught, but the clean country air was doing me the world of good. Around 11 o'clock the log burner was running low, and we had all but run out of wood. Jay drunkenly picked up a torch and decided that he would go and quickly gather some more, so that we could keep the good times flowing. I didn't protest. I was happy. I was content to allow that night to continue. He was a good friend, and insisted that I not raise a finger out there in the cold darkness. I watched from the window for a moment. Smiling, I returned to my book of choice, less dangerous than the previous read. After about 15 minutes, I realized how truly silent the cabin was. No noise, no wind, no sounds of life or the living, and for the first time I sensed something sinister resting in the stillness. Suddenly Jay burst into the cabin and collapsed on the floor, panting. He turned to the door and kicked it shut with his heels frantically, his eyes wide, panicked, disbelieving. Scrambling back to his feet, he turned the small table on its end and wedged it against the skin of the aging wood under the handle. "Help me, for Christ's sake," he whispered anxiously. I stood up quickly and rushed to my friend's aid, helping him pack furniture, anything with weight, against the door. I tried to find out what had happened, but Jay was exhausted and distraught. Prowling the window which gazed out towards the forest, his stare never broke for a moment from the frozen world outside. What had scared him so badly? I breathed deeply to calm myself, but Jay took no notice. He was too fixated on the darkness outside. Then he finally broke his silence. I have never been frightened of words, but my friend suddenly shook me. "There is something out there." I didn't reply immediately, but when I did, I could only think to ask, "Something?" What could he have meant by such an indefinite term? Jay had seen something big in the woods. My heart began to pound harder as Jay stuttered over the words. I saw it moving between the trees, straight for me. I didn't look back, but I'm telling you, it wasn't human. I knew my friend was convinced by what he said. I very much entertained the idea that there was someone out there, someone dangerous, mad, or perhaps both. My pulse continued to race, and I could feel my heart beating wildly at the thought of a shadowy figure prowling around outside, watching us, waiting. I was transfixed on one course of action: escape. I rushed over to the cabin's phone, but the line didn't work. Weirdly, Jay motioned for me and then pointed with shaking hand at the darkness outside. It was then that he let out the suffocated whisper, "It's there." Looking out into the moonlit night, I saw nothing at first. But as my eyes adjusted to the darkened landscape outside, I finally saw it. Deep down, I had hoped that Jay had simply drunk too much, but someone was standing among the trees, just standing and looking, bathed in darkness. It was difficult to make out any detail. All I could see was an outline, the outline of a stooped and hunched figure. Its arm wrapped around a tree as if steadying itself. It felt as though its stare was firmly transfixed on our cabin. Who is that?" I stammered. "Keep your voice down," Jay snapped in return. And so he whispered, and spoke of the hunched figure standing only a few hundred feet from us. "It's not a man," Jay kept saying. I saw through the trees. It moved in a weird way, limping, like it was off balance or deformed with something, but it moved fast. I have no idea how I made it back. Maybe it won't leave the trees. He turned suddenly, walking across the room to a table where I had left those yellowed pages which spoke of a strange creature living in the woods. Jay thumbed through it, shielding the light from his torch as best he could with his hand. As I watched him scan through the contents and flick to what he seemed so animated about, I almost laughed at the insinuation. It's a man, Jay, just someone messing with us. But he was convinced otherwise. "Look at this," he said, following the text with his finger as he read. "Accounts have varied over the centuries, but a central element to the myth states that the beast of Blackwood only wanders from the forest late at night." "Are you okay?" "I'll be fine. Let's just wait until it gets light and we can leave." "Are you crazy? You didn't see the thing up close. It's huge and quick. If it wants to get in here, it will." Jay turned to look outside to the grassland, with each ear towards our car, sleeping in the night chill between us and the brooding forest. "We need to leave, or you can stay here and I'll get the police. Either way, I'm going." He turned to look at me sternly, Which would we prefer? I didn't want to stay in that cabin alone. I threw my stuff in a bag and Jay did the same, each of us grabbing a knife from the kitchen for protection. And there we stood looking at the door. We dismantled our makeshift barricade as quickly as we could, and then, brandishing our kitchen knives nervously, slowly opened the door. It creaked softly, sucking in the night air. Jay, mindful of my condition, headed towards the car fast. "Keep looking around," he urged me in a whisper. Then Jay suddenly stopped. "What is it?" I whispered over the rain, my heart now beating wildly, throat dried by worry. Jay spoke without turning his head towards me, his breath visible in the beam of my torch. "I thought I saw something moving in the tree line." We drew closer to the car. "Open the door, let's get out of here," I pleaded as Jay fumbled for keys, dropping them to the ground. "Damn," he growled, and I recognized that something was very wrong. Jay wasn't moving. He hadn't even looked down to see where he had dropped the keys. He was staring at something, and the look of sheer panic in his eyes told me that we were not alone. I raised my hand, and with it a beam of light glinted over the car. Two large eyes stared back from the other side of the vehicle, a hunched, hulking thing glaring up at us, crouched behind the car bonnet. It shivered and then again, and as it rose up I saw it for a moment. Wet-drenched hair, mouth gaping, its face a pallid and quivering gray. It groaned loud with a strange, unearthly and high-pitched undertone, which only added to the creature's horrid appearance. "Run!" Jay yelled. I didn't need to be told twice. I dropped my bag and ran as fast as I could. My chest tightened. I cried in terror. This was a heart attack. I yelled out help, but all I could hear was Jay running behind me, screaming for me to move faster. "Keep going and don't look back." As the cabin came into touching distance, I heard the heartbreaking absence of my friend's footsteps. I understood implicitly that he was buying me time. Staggering to my feet, I lurched forward, clutching my chest. Before I could assist, Jay appeared from the darkness, grabbed my arm and threw me into the cabin. He frantically barricaded the door once more. What was the thing? I asked between gasps. "I don't know, but it wasn't human," said Jay before showing me the knife he had used during the fight, now covered in the putrid black liquid. I don't think even this hurt it much. "This is crazy. What do we do now?" "I don't know. I just don't know." And so we waited and waited, but the pain in my chest grew steadily, my breath more erratic. "We need to get you to a hospital," he said gently. "Yeah, just chopper me in." We both laughed for a moment. "I can't see anything out there anymore. I think I can make it to the car quicker on my own." "But that thing out there," I said, deeply down, ashamed that my fear galvanized a hope that my friend would indeed find the courage to try again. "Jay, please wait until morning," I asked, but my friend looked at me, clutching my chest. I knew he had already made up his mind. "Barricade the door as soon as I'm out." "Okay," I said, trying to hold back tears both of pain and worry for my friend's life. He gave me a hug and then he was gone. I closed the door and bolstered it once more with anything I could find, before putting myself back up onto the couch and looking outside. At first I could see nothing but the black stillness of the forest. Then a blast of light, then another, and another as Jay's touch sporadically burst into life. Then the intermittent line became erratic, moving one way then another, backwards, left, right. Was he lost? The light was quickly extinguished, followed by the sound of the door opening. One last flash of the torch. The isolated outline of hunched figures standing behind my friend. A curdling scream, then nothing. Jay was gone, the beast had got him, and I was alone. I peered out through the window, and I was sure that the attacker was out there somewhere, waiting. Thud, thud. Each thump sent waves of terror through my body. It was someone at the door. Thud, thud. I clutched my ears in despair, then I remembered the light. I flicked the switch and the porch light came outside, and at that the thudding stopped. I quickly turned on all the lights in the house, now realizing the creature's weakness. Then I heard it, the sound of something moving, shuffling, climbing. I stood paralyzed at the realization it came from my bedroom. Slowly the door from the bedroom creaked open. The creature's hand managed to slip through the gap. The beast seemed to hesitate for a moment, and as it did I shoved my hand through the gap in the door and flicked on the light in the room. A hole of pain, then nothing. I finally plucked up the courage to look inside. A window lay open, but the room was empty. I closed the window and staggered back into the main room. Then suddenly the creature's stilted head rose up from beneath the window sill. The inhuman face pressed against the cold glass. Its great skin sagged and whipped away from its eyes, the moist red flesh underneath visible in cabin's light. The shock had finished me. A sharp pain ran up my neck. The creature's green-tinged stare stabbed through me and its breath fogged the glass. I grabbed the only thing at hand, the old yellow book, and thrust it at the putrid face. The winter frost came to my defense. The beast slipped from its footing on a pipe which clung to the outside of the rickety old shack, and as I clawed at its face with utter disgust, the creature fell the 6 or 7 feet to the ground below. The sound of something hurt lying beneath the shattered window broke my daze, as I stared at the contents of my hands. Where there once had been eyes, the face now stared eyeless at me. Where there once had been a mouth, the creature gaped wide, lifeless, jawless, and utterly without agency. For in my fading grip lay the torn and crumpled remains of a mask. Then it came. Finally my heart began to give in. I stood up clutching my chest, and as I staggered backwards I saw the smiling face of Nick, my ex-husband. And then the words of my trusted friend. Thank God. They embraced beneath the window as I fell to the cold and solid wooden cabin floor. "What are we going to do about the window?" Nick asked. "I will just say that he smashed it during the heart attack. Now you need to go back to the woods and go home. I'll clean up here and then phone an ambulance once I'm sure he's gone." I almost chuckled to myself as I writhed around helpless on the floor. I woke to find myself in the white glow of a hospital room. The doctor who attended to me said that I had suffered another heart attack. The police were keen to speak with me. I gave them my account of what had occurred, and they in turn told me all of they knew. My unconscious body had been discovered next to a main road just outside of Blackwood Forest, on the outskirts of the nearest town. The cabin was thoroughly searched and was found in the same condition as I had left it. The window smashed, and the front door locked and barricaded from the inside. There was no trace of Jay or my husband. They simply couldn't be found. The only evidence that they had ever been there were their footprints in the mud around the cabin, accompanied by the third, much larger set, which led back deep into the Blackwood Forest.